Good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is hump day. We are almost we're moving towards the end of the work week. And I just want to be the first voice this morning, early this morning, to let you know that God is still in the miracle working business. God is still the one who is going to come down and rescue us. God is still the one who's working things out behind closed doors for you and for me. God is still the one who deserves all of the praise, all of the glory, all of the worship, not just for the things he's done, but because of who he is. Do we really know how great he is? Do we really know how holy he is? Do we really know how awesome he is? I don't think we'll ever really know. I think we experience moments in our lives when we surrender our lives to Christ that we give testimony about the goodness of God. But I don't think we'll ever know just how holy and just how awesome and just how great our God is. This morning, I just want to encourage you. We all need encouragement. Sometimes we just need to hear that someone else is going through the same thing that we are, or just that someone else is going through, period. Sometimes we need to hear about the goodness of God. Sometimes we need to hear about his track record that was over 2,000 years ago, of the things, the miracles, the blessings, the ways that he made way back then. And guess what? He's still that same God today. I want to let you know, remind you, and I remind myself as I'm reminding you that he is the Almighty God that parted the Red Sea and allowed his children to walk across on dry land. It was dry. He parted the Red Sea. On one side was the sea standing up, and then on the other side was the sea standing up, and in the middle was dry ground. Just like if you open your front door and you walk outside on the ground, that ground is dry if it hadn't been raining, but it's dry. And that's how the Red Sea was when his children walked across on dry land. And I can only imagine what that looked like. I wonder, did they see the fish? Did they see, were there any other creatures in that sea that was standing up on the left and standing up on the right? I can just imagine that in my mind as they walked across on dry land to the other side of freedom, of peace, of God's miracle, of his blessing, of his promise. That's what they were walking to. But the enemy didn't stop. The enemy said, well, we're going to go and we're going to walk across too on dry land. And God said, oh, no, you're not. And they tried to walk on the same land that God had paved for his children. And the sea swallowed them up. That's what God did for his children. So we think that God won't deal severely with our enemies. Oh, yes, he will. And I'm quite sure, you read it for yourself, God's children, before they walked across on dry land, I'm quite sure they had did something, they had said something, they had acted in a way that was disobedient to the heart and the plan of God. But his grace was sufficient. His grace was enough to get them through, to get them over on dry land. His forgiveness was enough. And this is me saying this. I believe that, let me say this the right way. I believe that there were probably moments when God was displeased with them. But because God knew that they were his children, because God knew that their hearts were fixed towards him, God said, you're still my children, and I'm going to let you walk across to see your promise. And that is the same God that we serve today, that we strive to serve today. I want to say to you this: God is still the same God who blessed Sarah at the age of 90, who was childless, to give her husband a child named Isaac. That is the same God. I am a miracle walking. My son is a miracle walking. At the age of 46, after having 15 or so miscarriages and one stillbirth that we cremated, God opened up my womb and he allowed me, thank you God, to give birth to a male child. And let me tell you something. My husband is a child of other brothers who may not have had such a checkered past as my husband. And he'll tell you, I haven't always done right. I haven't always said right. I haven't always lived right. So he was viewed as the black sheep. But when God has already established his plan and his promises, nobody can change that. And God saw fit to grace my husband with a male child who can, by the grace of God, carry out my husband's last name in holiness, in purity, in walking for Christ, in hearing God's voice. God can do those things, but we have to be spiritually minded to be able to receive it and know it and bless the Lord for it. So that is the same God that we still serve today. The one who blessed Sarah and Abraham with a child, with a male child named Isaac. He's that same God. He is the same God. He is the same God that allowed his only son to die on a cross. And in my mind, there will never be such another horrendous, horrifying, terrible, painstaking death as Jesus took, as he bore on the cross. There will never be another one, because his death was significant, and it was significant to the world, and his death was supposed to change the lives of people. But look at the world, and look at the road, look at the path that the world has taken and has proudly taken. And he's mocked every day. Some people's lives show that his death was in vain for them, because they're not being a partaker of his death. And he did not just die, but he bled as he died. But he was so much like Jesus, so much like himself, that he was able to get up. He was able to rise up. And he didn't just rise up empty-handed, but he arose with power and might and authority, all in his hand and all in his name. And it belongs to him. He is the same God. He is the same God who allowed his son. Now I'm talking about our flesh being under subjection. He's the same God who allowed his son, and his son, he walked right along there beside the plan and the purpose that his father had for him. He was the same God who allowed, who already knew that his son was going to be among people who would abuse him, who would criticize him, who would mock him, and his son did not say not one word. But we are so quick to want to, you're not going to say whatever you want to me. Yeah, sometimes we don't make the mark. Sometimes we do speak out of our flesh. But Jesus also left something here for us called self-control. And when you can have the self-control that Jesus left for us, that is a fruit of the Spirit, self-control can keep us out of a lot of heartache and headaches and mishaps and misfortunes and sleepless nights and long days. Self-control. He was the same God back then as he is now, that has self-control here for us to say, God, I want your self-control. My flesh don't want it, but you say that I need it. So I want what you want. Self-control. 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 I say it again. Self-control. Self-control that comes with peace. Self-control that comes with joy. When you have self-control, you can walk away from something that once used to frazzle you and make you upset and make you want to clap back. But the peace of God comes along with self-control. And I thank God for it this morning. I thank him for it this morning. And I want to say that he is God. He's everything that we need. He's everything that we need. Now unto him who is able to keep us from falling. Now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O God. Today, let the words of your mouth, what you say, let it be acceptable unto God. When you sit at your desk, when you're driving down the street, when you're standing in line at Walmart, and you're just kind of just thinking about this or that, and your mind begins to wander far off, and you start thinking something that's not of God, shake yourself and say, now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Because the enemy's not going to stop trying to plant thoughts in our minds. He's not going to stop trying to use us to speak evil and to speak chaos and to speak confusion and to speak evil and wicked and ugly things against one another, against people. He's not going to stop. But when you find yourself in a place, excuse me, and your mind has wandered afar and you're thinking of things that you can say about somebody, how you can get somebody in trouble, how you can set up a trap and get somebody to be looked at in an ugly way because you don't like them, quickly check yourself and say, now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, oh God. And ask God to forgive you in that moment, because the word of God says that we are to crucify our flesh daily. We got to crucify our flesh daily. You know what that says to me? That says that there are going to be moments in the day where we're going to find ourselves caught up in something that's not like God. But when you find yourself in that moment, that's going to be God speaking to you, giving you an opportunity, giving you grace to get in place. Don't let Satan use you. Don't let him allow you to carry out that thought. Don't let him allow you to continue that conversation. Cut it off and say, now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, oh God. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Lord, I crucify my flesh. You may not say, Lord, I crucify my flesh, but you may say, you know what? I shouldn't even be thinking this. Let me go over here and do something positive. Let me go over here and see what I can get into that's going to help the work environment. Let me go over here and see who I can encourage. Lord, forgive me Strengthen me and deliver me from that place of bondage where I let my mind linger and our thoughts turn into actions. And crucify. That is crucifying your flesh. Tell the devil no. Say, I used to do that. I used to say that, but I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to let that spirit, because it's all spirits. I'm not going to let that overtake me. I'm not going to let the devil use me, because at the end of the day, all of this stuff you see on social media, all of this stuff you see on TikTok, Facebook about, let me tell you what God did for me. And then people turn around and live just as raggedy, live just as ugly, living in all kinds of sin and accepting all types of things in the church. We use God's name in vain. We use God's name because we want what he has. We got our hands open. We done begged God so much our hands look like cups. But we're not willing to say, God, I want to be more like you. I just don't want your blessings, but I want your spirit. I want your heart. So we have to let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in the sight of God. We have to crucify our flesh daily. We have to begin to walk away from those things that God is not pleased with. Let me tell you something. Excuse me. If you want to know if something is of God or not, just simply ask yourself a question. How would Jesus feel if he saw me doing this? If he saw me saying this? Would this be something that he would co-sign? And if you have that gut feeling where you can't automatically say, well, he be pleased with this, 9 times out of 10, it's not God, and he would not be pleased with it. Now, there are some people who they just out there. It's not no sense in you telling them God don't like this. They're already set in their ways. There's no change in them. They're stubborn. They're prideful. They're pig-headed. They are rebellious, and they dance to the beat of their own drum. They lean to their own understanding, and they have gotten to a place to where they are mocking God and they don't even know it. And you just have to release that person. But today, let today be the day that you begin to say, now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O God. I crucify my flesh so that God can be pleased with me. You better crucify your own flesh, because you don't want God to judge you. I feel sorry for people who say only God can judge me. I would rather somebody come to me and point out a flaw or point out a sin. They may not even be in line to be able to tell me nothing. But if I know that what they're saying is true, and if I change what they've pointed out, it's going to give God glory and it's going to edify people around me. I bite my flesh. I put my flesh up under my feet and I say, you know what? I don't like that he said something to me, but what he said is true. I do need to change. I do need to stop that. Because if God comes to judge you, if God has to be the one to come and correct you, that's gonna hurt way more. That spiritual spanking, that spiritual whooping is gonna hurt way more. God's judgment is gonna hurt way more than Sister Bumblebee coming and telling you that you need to stop sleeping with so-and-so's husband, that you need to stop going to your job stealing paper clips, that you need to stop padding your time sheet, that you need to stop padding your taxes. Hello. Been there, done that. But there is something called the conviction of God that sets in that will allow you to come to a point to where you say, God, I don't want to live like this no more, because it's not pleasing to you and it doesn't make my spirit feel right. I feel out of place. I feel out of sorts. It's the conviction of God. You have a conscience now where you once had no conscience. And that is a good thing, because God chastises those that he loves. You all be blessed today. I am just nobody, but I'm a daughter that belongs to Christ. So that makes me everything in the kingdom. The world don't ever have to receive me. But as long as I'm good in the kingdom, as long as I'm good, in good standing with Christ, I may not say and do everything that everybody else wants me to, but as long as I'm in good standing with Christ, I know I'm on the right path. Surrender your life to Christ. If you have backslidden, come on back over, but come back over in humility. And when you come back, don't be boastful and proud and, well, God, he loved me too and he forgave me and I want a seat at the front of the table. No, come back in humility. Be willing to come back and sit at the back. Be able to come back and learn all over again. That's humility. And God will give you favor to make your name better again. Where you once scarred your name and muddied up your name. God will do that because he is a God of grace and mercy. When he sees your humility, God, he's close to the humble, but the proud he resists. He knows from afar. And then be kind to somebody today. Do something loving for somebody today that is not in your household. Do something for somebody today. We do for people who don't even appreciate it. But ask God to show you that person that you can be a blessing to today. And then pass this podcast to two people that you know just need encouragement. You may say, well, they're not going to never listen to it. But they may listen to this podcast. And it may be weeks down the line. It may be months down the line. It may be even next year. But that will be the moment that it will change their lives. God uses people to speak to us. No man is an island. So you all be blessed today and know that God has an answer. And as I minister to you, I minister to myself. God has an answer. God has a ram in the bush. That just means that whatever it is that we need, that we need to rescue us, that we need to come in and complete the assignment, whatever it is that we need, God has it in a bush. He has it. It may be you go outside and you meet a neighbor and that person bless you in such a way that you're able to fulfill something you've been seeking God for. You may go to the gas station and just run into somebody and God uses that person to transcend you to another place in him. So God has a ram in the bushes. Take that and put it in your bosom. Take that and put it in the palm of your hand. Let it resonate in your heart. God has an answer for me. He has what I need. And he's going to use somebody. He's going to take what we call as foolishness. It makes no sense. Well, that don't make sense to me. That's just crazy. But God's going to take it and he's going to make it make sense. He's going to make it work together with the good and the bad, with the hurt and the pain, with the joy and the sorrow. And it's going to come out fully baked. And it's going to taste good. And it's going to smell good. And it's going to edify. And it's going to build you and I up. Pray for one another today. When you think about me, say, God, help Keycha. If that's all you say and you mean it, God's going to do something with it. It's my honor to pray for you. I'm going to continue to pray for you and pour into you as God has poured into me. You all be blessed. I love you. And until next time, bye-bye.